No sound detected. Oh, okay. I was about to say what? All right, all right. Oh, my dog is on the other side watching Netflix. Okay, hold on a second. Yeah, kind of got me off track here. Go sit down. Jesus, he keeps trying to jump on a podcast. This guy wants to be on a show with everybody else. How you doing, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome to This and That. I am your host, Xander, where we talk about this, that, and everything in between. Today, we're going to dive straight on into this conversation about marriage for convenience. Do men marry women for convenience rather than love? And we're going to break down this concept. Before I get started with breaking down this concept, I want to make sure that you guys know to like and subscribe. Make sure that you join the membership. Make sure that you check out our merchandise. We have it spread out across all of our videos that are being aired. If you're looking at us from YouTube, you also now see them in the live. We have random objects selected on a daily basis on our long and short form videos, but on our live podcast, we have our This and That merchandise. We have This and That stores. I appreciate you guys coming in on TikTok. We're going to be talking about do men marry for convenience? You can dive right in and say hell no if that's what you think. Make sure that you hit the subscribe button on the bottom right side of the screen because it will give you the ability to subscribe to us to the YouTube channel, and then you can dive right back over here on TikTok. It'll give you notifications 30 minutes before the show airs and right when the show airs, just in case we end up starting the show a tad bit late. Um, in addition to that, we have affiliate merchandise. I already talked about most of that. We have discounts on our merchandise from our membership portion of the podcast for those of you who join the membership on YouTube. So if you join a membership on YouTube, you get your promo code, and I give you guys the ability to shop from any of our This and That stores. The promo code is exclusive to the This and That merchandise, not the affiliate merchandise. For those of you that are following us on YouTube or Twitch or Facebook, you have this nifty link here that if you are interested in coming to the podcast, you click the link, you approve the link, approve the microphone, you come to the show, just like we did last night. You're able to dive in live. We're able to have us a discussion in real time. We remember Joe yesterday was showing off the villa that he had rented, took his family out on a vacation. And like we said, men of status, not men of status, men of value, who take great care of the families, will go the extra mile to see their family happy, take time off from work, plan a vacation, cover all the bases, and make sure that their family and their kids are having a great time. Let's see. We are here 7 days a week. So we do want to see you guys jump in onto the podcast live. If you're coming in on TikTok, though, you guys have the request to get in button until we get the stream key and merge everything together. You request to get in, and then we blend everything together. And then you guys will also be seen on the podcast in real time also. The other thing we have left is for those of you who jump into the podcast and you like what we're talking about at the time, when you dive in, you can give us some special likes or special emoji donations or special thanks donations in the comment section of apparently YouTube, Twitter, and TikTok. And that will give us the ability to further support the podcast. Specifically, I know that we're able to grab that from our monetization on YouTube. We're kind of working on a milestone for TikTok to try to get us to that subscription. At this point in time, you guys can give us, we have a small goal of like 500 likes or some shit like that we're doing this week. You can go ahead and tackle that. while you're watching the podcast until we get to the monetization. Same thing over on Twitch until we get to the monetization. If you want to hit that like button 1,000,001 times, then show us some love. But let's dive into this topic because this topic was supposed to be one interesting enough for us to go ahead and cover. So you guys get to see us on picture-in-picture in Twitter because over on StreamYard, we're streaming on every place except TikTok. Everybody else only gets to see the one picture. So, stay blessed. You get to see the raw hardcore style over on Twitter, on TikTok, and the official stance over on YouTube is completely different. So, we're talking about today, do men marry for convenience? And in order for us to break that scenario down, we need to go ahead and first start talking about the true nature of the marriage itself. Because while marriage is a financial institution, we have to understand that the original construct of marriage was in order to unite two souls together in a church under the eyes of God and for whatever religion that you have. Under the financial aspect of things, it is two stock options, ironically, because your birth certificate is a bill of sale for your social security number, which is your stock number. So which is why you report to the IRS with your social security card every time you file taxes when your stock makes money. So while people are buying, selling, and trading with you as a stock option, you marry somebody and you two stock options come together to be united as one stock option. So that is the difference between splitting and combining stock options in marriage. So when you think about that, you think about the fact that does a man really benefit from getting married from the financial aspect of things? And then we have to think about from a social construct. When men get married, the men are supposed to be marrying a partner, which means that they're supposed to be getting somebody that is going to bring them peace, not somebody that's going to bring them chaos. And if we're thinking about is marriage beneficial for men, or are men really running away from the idea of marriage, we have to think about the chaos that men are dealing with in relationships these days with women that are overly aggressive in the dating field before you get to the marriage. And the marriage is not something that the female earns, it is something that the female demands. I can tell you right now that men are not going to sail on that ship, not for very long. I know some men that might actually clap cheeks for do what it takes to clap the cheeks, but I don't believe that there are too many men that are willing to spend the rest of their lives with a dictatorship where the man has to not only be subordinate to the woman, but also has to pay for the existence of the woman at the same time. There are some men that'll do it, but not a lot. And those relationships are very rocky. And after either the man gets tired of the way he's being treated, or the woman gets tired of the man's lack of compliance, then the woman tends to bail. And when that happens, then you have the divorce, where the woman takes half of your resources. So when you think about if the woman is not satisfied with the marriage, even though she had her own bag on her own time, she's able to walk away with half of your bag at the same time because you didn't do a good enough job. No, that's also not beneficial to the men. So when we sit here and think about are men afraid of commitment, or are men afraid of marriage? No, we just don't want to deal with the bullshit. Our men are not willing to get into marriage because of the lack of convenience. That is the full totality of the situation. And how convenient is marriage for a man? I'm just going to come straight out and tell you, it's not convenient at all. Think about the whole process of getting married. So we've talked about this scenario from 6 months ago when we rolled it out. We said, look, from the time that you meet the girl, You have to go over and talk to the girl, convince her to have a conversation that lasts long enough for you to get her real contact information. She may give you her social media handles. And then after she gives you her social media handles, then she starts communicating with you about your first date. When you guys set up your first date, you are expected to pay for that first date. You may even have to transport her to the first date in some situations, all at your expense. So far, so bad. Then you have, if you guys continue to communicate with one another, you're going to end up with a second, third, fifth, ninth, 10th date. Modern day behavior dictates that women expect men to pay for all of those dates. There are some egalitarian women out there that will pay for some of those dates, or go Dutch on the first 2 or 3 or 4 dates if they're going to lock it in with you. Once they decide that you are the one that they're going to try to work towards, they're still going to abandon the expectation of paying for the dates. They just might pay for the first handful, which kind of gives you a little bit of a discount on the scenario, but it's still an expensive venture in and of itself. Because no matter whether or not you go Dutch or whether or not the man is being expected to pay for everything because he's just a man, the men still have this problem where once you guys stop dating and end up being in a relationship, that if you wasn't paying for the whole ride at the beginning, you are definitely paying for this ride for the rest of the time. So whether you're there for dating for like 6 months, or if you were dating for like a year, 2 years, 5 years, and then for some reason, no matter how short or extremely long the relationship has been, that the man has been financing the woman's existence. I call it renting a girlfriend. Throughout this process, the man is paying for everything. Somebody decides we're going to get married. In that scenario, you have yet another problem, because here in 2024, we have no family traditions. We have no family values that are being expressed amongst the adults. We have no family values that are being expressed amongst traditional wedding ceremonies, where the dowries, where the men would go and get the dowry from the woman's mom in exchange for the wedding, and da, 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 da. We don't have any of that stuff going on these days. Right now, what we have is, if the woman wants to get married, or if the man wants to marry the woman, that man has to pay for the wedding. Now, back in the day, traditionally, at least in the 60s and 70s, the girl's dad would pay for marrying off his daughter. That was at least less difficult than in 2024, because here in modern 2024 times, no, nobody's paying for the marriage. You are going to get an invitation, and then you are going to spend $500,000 on this one party that is supposed to be the party of all parties, where the wife is the center of attention for the entire day. It's the most expensive birthday party that, like, you could really just have a wedding ceremony at like a Chuck E. Cheese, or like a, I don't know, like a Disney World kind of. You don't really have, and then Disney World is expensive too. You don't need to have $100, $200, $300,000 wedding to show how much you care about each other. And then it's not how much you care about each other, because the husband is the only person paying for all this shit. Yet before we even get to the wedding, the guy's got to spend 2/3, at least 1/3 of his income on the ring. Women want $30,000 rings. If a guy's income is $60,000, she's asking for more than half of his annual salary to buy this ring. So he's renting her every day, every week, every month. And while he's renting her, he's also leasing, rent to own, finance to buy a ring. And then once he financed to buy a ring, then he will be able to come and buy a ring that you hopefully will like, because you could always not like the ring, and that would just throw the wedding right out the window. But he's spending all this money, and after he spends all of this money, now the guy is dealing with the whole wedding part. Now there's the bachelorette party that's being thrown by the girl, so you don't have to worry about that. And hopefully your homeboys is throwing you the bachelor party, if unless you're funding your own bachelor party. That typically happens when you're the most successful person in your group. And then you have to deal with the wedding. You're probably going to have to pay for your own honeymoon unless you have wealthy friends who can get you, or people who know each other that get along, who can put their money together to get you a vacation. And if that's not the case, you're paying for your own honey. So you just paid for the first 30,000 dates that you guys are going on, and you're paying for renting the girl for the rest of her dating phase. And then you're paying for the ring, and you've paid for the wedding. You spent more money on this girl than a Tesla Cybertruck. Now you are husband and wife, and now you are going to continue to finance her very existence, because it is your obligation as a husband to pay for your wife. And the sad part is that even if the situation goes south and she divorces you, she gets half of whatever you got, unless she makes more than what you make. And then you still have to give her alimony for the remainder of her life. So from the time that you meet her until after you divorce and she marries somebody else, she is your financial problem. Do men get married out of convenience? Cody, what do you think? Do you think men get married out of convenience? Because to me, that sounds like it is not convenient at all. It sounds to me like that is the biggest financial headache that a man could ever get himself involved in. While we date for the expectation to find convenience in a companionship, we don't typically date to find the convenience in marriage. We might want long-term relationships with somebody. We don't typically expect the marriage to happen, but we have been conditioned over the years that when we want to have a long-term committed relationship with somebody, that we spend all of this extra money on a marriage. We forget that, if you really wanted to do the whole marriage thing, you could skip that really long ceremony that wastes a bunch of money out of your pocket, and then turn around and go to the justice of the peace for a couple $100, and now you're hitched. So the $35,000 ring could have been a $200 ring from Zales, and the $200,000 wedding could have been a $200 day, probably even a $50 to $75 day, depending on what city and state you're in. And you probably could do an indigent form to get past paying for the cost of court, and you could get that document filed without having to spend all of this extra money. But nobody really wants to hear that shit. They don't want to think, oh, that's the cheap route. You're supposed to have money if you're going to get married, right? Well, ladies, you're going to say that men better have bank in order to marry you. What if I got bank as a man, and you want me to marry you, and it was your financial obligation to buy me the engagement ring, and then pay for the wedding, and then potentially pay for the honeymoon in order for you to get married? Would you ladies actually invest in that? And I'm going to ask it again because Sonia just came in. Sonia Arbat, check it out. If you wanted to get married, ladies, and say the man may have money, he could have a lot of it, but you have to pay for the engagement ring for the fiance. You ladies would have to pay for the wedding, and you ladies would have to pay potentially for the honeymoon. Would you actually commit to that? Now, if the answer is no, then we can clearly say that marriage is not convenient for anyone financially. But a lot of people say, well, you do it for the monogamy. With all the cheaters that we have on both sides of the fence, it's not for the monogamy. There's even open marriages where people are called swingers, where they're doing everything but keeping it between the two of them. There are polygamous marriages where it's the husband and the wife that shares a man or a woman in their relationship. Extra. But no, nowhere in there is a scenario where it makes sense to be spending all of this capital. It really emphasizes our capitalist country. There is no scenario that makes sense where we're spending all of this capital on boosting up the wedding market by spending all of this money to do what? Impress the neighbors, impress the general population that, hey, I'm getting hitched. That's not a good thing to spend a bunch of money on. I feel like all the money that you could have put towards stocks and bonds and mutualities that you dumped into this marriage, you did so much investing into this marriage that you threw away a massive. And if you're investing in Bitcoin right now, you would be doing it big, because this is the time of year where it peaks. So you'd be investing in it right before it plummets. And for some reason, instead of doing that, you're investing in marriage. And I just try to figure out why. So, how you doing, Red Void? We see you just dove in. Liberty Churcher, Silly Emma, we really appreciate you guys. So yeah, that's where we are. We're with that confusion. We're with that confusion. That why would it be considered really convenient for the whole marriage construct? Now, when it comes down to the idea of dedicating yourself to one specific person, do men dedicate themselves to one specific person out of the convenience of that? Then yes, of course. A man would prefer a constant sex partner than to put in all of the unrealistic effort that women want men to go through in order to get to sleep with them under normal circumstances anyway. Beyond that, there isn't much behind for those men that are chasing sex as surprise. There isn't much behind the engagements between men and women beyond having a consistent sex partner. But for those men that are the prize, those higher valued men, those men of higher statuses, even when you get with your female and she is supposed to be bringing your peace, she's supposed to be keeping your ship afloat until you get back, keeping your kingdom in order instead of disarray, then you're able to get with a woman that blends well with your mentality, and that woman is able to boost you up. You don't have a problem with partnering with that kind of person. But you have people who don't believe in marriage, so they have domestic partnerships. You have commonwealth marriages where you guys have lived together for so long that you were treated as a couple, even though you don't necessarily get the tax laws that you would have gotten from that. The fact is that you guys will just stay together and treat each other like a couple. Now, I've said on plenty of scenarios that since you don't make a wife, you marry one. She would have to be wife material before you got engaged, and then whatever she was doing before the marriage is what you expect that she will do, and sometimes less after the marriage. And if that's the case, then you're in a position where when you do finally tie the knot, proverbially, and you do start hanging out with one another, you will be in a situation where now you are financially obligated to invest in a second person. And there's nothing about that makes any sense. There's nothing about getting into a relationship with somebody for the sake of having to pay for their existence for the remainder of their life, especially if you don't have children. And if you have children, you might be used to it. But if you don't have children, who volunteers to start paying for somebody else? And why is it that men have to pay to fund the existence of the women here in 2024. We understand that that's the way the laws were back in 2000, not 2000, back in the 1800s, the 1960s, 1950s is when they really start doing away with the dowries and arranged marriages. And women were able to marry men for whatever reason, and then were able to divorce those men without cause after 1950. So, women became financially self-sufficient in 2000. So by 2020, like a woman more often than not is more successful than a man, and they're complaining about that instead of getting with their men and aiding their men to become more successful. So, unless she's making more money than you, she's coming out with half. And if she's already financially stable, she could be the kind of woman that would be marrying a man just so that she could divorce him. We got to be careful of that, gentlemen. We have some, like the marriage is only going to be successful if both parties want the marriage to be successful. If one party doesn't want the marriage to be successful, then guess what? The marriage will not be successful. And that's going to be a huge issue that you have to be able to iron out. So you hopefully want to iron it out in the dating phase before you get to the fiance scenario. But once you get to the fiance scenario where it is really understood that you are willing to invest money in this female for the remainder of her life, then that's the moment where you guys got to come to terms with exactly what you guys are supposed to be doing. And if you can't come to terms with what exactly you guys are supposed to be doing, that's when the marriage gets canceled and the invitations have already gone out and people have RSVP'd and sent in their gifts. And for those of you who understand about marriage, there's tradition that you're supposed to send a gift with your RSVP or bring a gift to the wedding in person. And then the bride and groom are supposed to have their gifts. Now, if you're in a situation where the bride and groom break up before the marriage, there is a traditional expectation that you're supposed to return all those gifts. Not too many people do. Yeah. But in any of those situations, we still understand that sometimes dating isn't even convenient for the behavior of some of these lower value women in the United States. The dating aspect is such a harsh scenario. And when we start putting our foot down and saying, well, we need to evaluate the women to determine if the woman is valuable enough, and her value to the man is not her attraction, her physical attraction, because the man's situation does not improve with accessibility to sex. And since a man's position, his obligations do not improve when the woman shows up and is a dedicated sex partner. Her value to him is not sex. Her value is when she brings him peace and when she aids him in accomplishing his goals. His value to her is the exact same as when he's bringing her peace or alleviating her of some of her, if not all of her stress. And then, the companionship. So by it being both ways, you have to understand that if she's benefiting from him, from financial security, physical security, transportation, other such, then her situation is going up. She's going from walking and riding bicycles to, driving. She's got a chauffeur, whatever. She goes from living in her parents' basement to living in her own place. All of these things elevate her, so she benefits from him, which is what makes him the prize. He doesn't benefit from her because the only thing that he does get from her is smiles and sex. So, and that is going to entertain you for all of 35, 45 seconds, 2-3 minutes, and then you're not happy with it. And then since men are attracted to variety, the issue that we have with the attraction to variety is that a lot of women will be upset about the men who cheat, but they also will cut off a man and not satisfy a man's sexual desires and use that as a manipulative tool to convince the man to do things that he otherwise would not do. And the fact that you want the man to be exclusive to you, but you will cut him off emotionally, you will cut him off sexually, and then say that, you know, he should have done what he was told because you're doing this to get complacentness of the men are going to cheat. So the issue is now is that, is it convenient for a man to get into a marriage when a woman is going to utilize sex as a control tactic in the marriage? And then you're paying for all the stuff to get into this marriage. And then when you get divorced, you're paying all this extra stuff to get out of the marriage. Like half of your estate goes to getting out of the marriage, unless she's making more money than you. She's more successful than you, and you could prove that in a court of law. You might be able to walk away without having to pay alimony. But if you're more successful than her because she decided to spend 6 years going to be a registered nurse, and now she's making 40, 50, you're making 70, 80, you're going to have to give up half your paycheck. That's just the way life works. Children are involved. You're paying child support unless you have custody of the kids. So you're in another situation where even if you're not married, if you end up in a commonwealth situation or a domestic partnership situation, once the children are involved, you're going to be paying for child support for whoever's got the kids. So if you're not a single dad walking around with 13 kids of your own, then you're not free from childbirth unless you're giving birth to kids in Japan and North Korea. Those guys are really encouraging that you fly over there, as long as you're not a U.S. citizen, to go to North Korea. But all of the other countries don't care if you're a U.S. citizen, and you fly over there and you have children, and the government will pay for it over there in those countries because they're having a population shortage. And the population shortage is not getting better. So for those of you that are saving your ducats while watching the podcast, you are able to see that yeah, they're not playing. They're seriously trying to repopulate their whole country. So you could go over there and drop your lineage in that country instead of dealing with the bullshit in the United States. But beyond that, no, every other country, especially the United States, where they're requiring Rod. Oh, it's good to see you, buddy. So I guess, Ron, you're just listening in onto the podcast here. Yeah, we're live today. It's good to see you on the podcast. We have a lot of background noise there. Ron had to dive in and put his 15 seconds of fame in there. For the rest of you that are interested in jumping in during the podcast, Ron, yeah, he's back. So, Ron, what do you got to say about the topic today? Are you just interested in what we got going on? Nope, he's just hanging out, having a good time.
Yes, sir.
All right. So, for the rest of us, Ron was just popping in to say hello. We really appreciate that. And for the rest of us, if you guys are interested in coming to the podcast, by all means, dive into the podcast and give us your shout outs. And we'll, as long as we confirm that you're an adult, or if we confirm that you're not an adult, then we will definitely not have you up on the podcast. But once we confirm that you are an adult, we will have you up on the podcast, and you'll be able to jump into the show, and we'll be able to have a casual conversation where, like I said before, we can continue through our podcast. Typically, we like a lot like what Joe came in yesterday, and we were able to bounce back and forward with our conversation about Joe's house and Joe taking care of his family and doing it big for the holidays right before not the holidays, for the summer break right before school starts. we were talking about how it is a good idea to be able to take your family on vacations and have a good time. And this typically comes from those moderate to high value men that are in those situations where they have stacked up their cash and saved up their money and not had the type of relationship where the woman was spending all of his money. So we would then be able to take our family out on vacations and trips, at least around the country. I can't say that we could always afford to take our families with trips around the world, because the cost of a plane ticket to go to the other side of the country is sometimes $1,000 to $2,000, depending on when you fly. And that is a one-way ticket. You might get lucky and have a round trip ticket, but not all the time do you get that round trip ticket. And since that's not what you're able to accomplish, it's not always a good look to do that $2,000 a person. Because if you take a family of 5 and you fly to like Taiwan has this thing where they give you like $16,000 in a lottery if you fly over. And I'm thinking, yeah, that sounds great, but it's a lottery, so it's not guaranteed. And if I'm paying $16,000 to fly a family of 4, a family of 4 over for $16,000. If you gave me $16,000, you'd just be covering my flight, not even my hotel stay. So you have that scenario on your plate that makes it a little bit more difficult for you to be successful. So when we're looking at, I appreciate you. Thank you for the love. When we're looking at, Dante, I know that name. So when we're looking at, is that even convenient? When you start talking about spending almost 10 grand to take the family somewhere, no, that's not convenient at all, because those moderate to average level men that are making 50 to 60,000 a year, no, it's too much to put this person in a position where half of your income for the year is going towards this one activity. And we have what looks like a Julie Hill. But Julie, wave for me real quick. Same scenario. How you doing, Lucas Opposer? Yes. Lord, I tell you. So just to make sure that we get in there, we have the scenario where our guests have to register. And since our guests have to register, we were able to see which profile registered on the podcast today. So that's actually pretty interesting. So with the guest authentication, we are able to look at your user profile and see who you are before you come in. So remember, I told you that when you dive in onto the podcast that you have to be over the age of 18. You know, it's hard to make a flex on that situation and say, I'll make an exception and let one in because children act childish on the podcast, which isn't what we want to have happen on this adult podcast. We would prefer for you guys to come in, we would prefer for everyone to come in and have intellectual communication, hopefully on the topic. But if we were talking about something that was kind of segued off of the topic because of the direction that the topic went, that we would still be having intellectual conversation. So we make sure that because it's an adult-only platform, you got to be 18. You're not going to be able to come in on the podcast once we confirm that you are not 18. So we still appreciate you guys for coming to watch the podcast, but If you're not old enough, you can't be here. So, showing some love for you guys for dropping in. Lucas Opposer, as well as Clips XS, who has been diving in over the past week. Noah Schaefer hasn't been here lately, but he has come in a couple times earlier this week. So we really appreciate him from coming in. Gabriel and A-Tens, who have showed up from time to time. You guys have been very supportive, so we really appreciate you guys. And we also really appreciate the rest of our fans on both YouTube and Twitch. And for those of you that are coming in to watch us on Twitter, we really or TikTok, sorry, we really appreciate you following us on TikTok. Now, we also appreciate you guys that are watching us from Romania right now because, we're starting to expand and we're starting to get things a little bit bigger. And even still, while our podcast is growing, we're still saying that trying to get involved with a marriage under the full knowledge, the advanced knowledge that if the situation goes south and she's greedy or a known gold digger, that you will end up in a situation where you're going to be spending a lot of money on a lawyer to keep from having to pay this girl dividends. You can try to represent yourself in divorce court, but unless you know the divorce laws, you're not going to walk away from that with a bunch of assets and resources. So you typically have to have really to prevent a woman, if you're going to get into a marriage, which isn't convenient, you have to get into a prenup, which isn't convenient. And I would actually really encourage men these days to get the prenup established while you're dating and then update the prenup after you get married. So once you guys end up in a situation where you decide to commit to one another, if you were in a prenuptial dating phase where there was stipulations towards resources such as accessibility to the house and the resources like the car, how much of your capital will be given to the girl or allowed to be spent by the girl, which prevents her from overspending, and then being able to keep track of what happens with the money that she spends. The whole dating process is a business transaction. So if you treat it as a business transaction from social interaction phase to the marriage, then she technically will be getting a raise or a promotion when you go from being the wife from the girlfriend to the wife. So if you pay attention to that and you pay attention to the connections, then you don't necessarily have to worry about getting the prenup set up when you first start. But you know that the woman is going to be after your money if she's not willing to sign the prenup. And you got to make that prenup ironclad, the kind of prenup that says that, well, it doesn't matter how many times I cheat on you. If you get the divorce, you don't get anything. You don't get any money. You're not entitled to nothing. You're forfeiting your right to seek financial compensation based on this agreement. Now, nothing, if you have the type of prenuptial agreement that says that nothing voids this agreement under the jurisdiction of the United States laws, and you have some other legal documentation in there that also aids you in this particular endeavor, when they decide that they're going to try to take legal action against you to get financial compensation, then you can sue them for breach of contract. And the reason why I say, you sue them for breach of contract is because if they sign a contract that says that I will not come after you for financial compensation after the marriage, if they come after you after the marriage is over, the prenuptial agreement, if you have that type of prenuptial agreement that exists for not only the duration of the marriage, but also any post-marriage fallout, then you're covered. You're not supposed to come after me for any financial compensation after the marriage, which would include child support, alimony, anything like that, half of my resources, anything like that. And if you do come after me for that stuff, then I can sue you for breach of contract, where the breach of contract is going to be valued at whatever you are going to get out of your lawsuit. Now, one of the things that you have to understand when you're getting a divorce and when you're committing a lawsuit is that states have statutes of limitations that differ from one another, and you are able to take legal action against somebody for a minimum of around, or not a minimum, but around a maximum of uh, 12 months in most states is a statute of limitations. Some give 2 years. Uh, some states have longer statute of limitations, but most states on average have at least 1 year after the incident. If you file your claim within 1 year after the incident, then you're good to go. So she divorces you, she violates the prenuptial agreement, and then after she finished doing what she's doing, you got a value, then you sue her for breach of contract for the value of whatever her judgment was, plus the cost of court, and punitive damages, which is whatever money you had to give to her in addition to the judgment because she screwed up. If you can push that in court, you get all your money back, or at least what you gave her, and now she owes you, and she's probably not going to try to pay, but that's okay. You can put liens against her license. You can put liens against her assets. You can put, because you know what all of her assets are because you've been with her for a long period of time, and then you can just chop it up and tank everything that is about her. But why would you want to spend so much time and effort to ruin somebody's life when your goal was to be happy with that person primarily? But since you guys aren't together, you could be focusing your efforts somewhere else. That's what I think. But it's hard to really dictate like what people are willing to put themselves through in order to find happiness. But for the most part, men typically actually just date to find happiness. They're just not always all that successful. So, the compass of this is that no, we do not date for I see Clips Z. So you are from Clips XF. On every channel. He's on every channel. Yeah, that's right. So like I was saying, short answer is no, we do not benefit from the marriage. We do not benefit from the divorce. We do not benefit from the dating phase where we're renting the girl. And if we're lucky to rent the girl and she has a positive attitude while we're renting the girl, that's probably the best that we're going to get. But we're not going to see a larger quantity of females that are going to be cashing out on our actual success. And since the women are not investing in the men, but the men are expected to invest in the women, we have a dynamic shift there too, because we have the gender inequality from the women, and then we have the gender inequality, the social inequality in our Western society that oppresses men from speaking out on that gender inequality. So I'm going to tap out a bit early today. I've been running on burnout steam for the past week. I know I started a couple shows a little bit late, but I know that you guys want to come and see us. We're available 9 Eastern, 8 Central, and 5 Pacific. Try my best to get here on a timely fashion. We started a little bit late today. We had audio issues. It is what it is, but the show must go on. You got to air it at least once a day, every day. So you'll see us in here at some point between 9 Eastern, 8 Central, and 5 Pacific. And we typically run a 1 hour to 2 hour podcast. If I got the motivation, the energy, but I'm burned out. I'm actually falling asleep behind the podcast. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to tap out early today, get me a good nap in, because I got some contracts I got to fill because somebody's got to pay for the podcast. So got to let the rubber hit the road here and get out there and make ends. So I really appreciate you guys. Starting off with TikTok, we're going to sign off over there on TikTok. And ladies, as long as the situation doesn't make sense, I keep asking you ladies to make it make sense. So ladies, make it make sense. I really appreciate you coming back. Doodle-a-doo. We typically last a little bit longer, but today I'm a little bit under the weather, so I'm tapping out early. So I appreciate you coming back, but I'll have to take contact with you tomorrow when we're doing our members only live show, where we're going to be reviewing the comments from the fans. I want to see you guys step in and put your 2 cents in. So with that being said, I'm going to say that you guys at TikTok have a good night. Hi, Nadifa. Actually, pretty good turnout. You guys are showing up. Thank you very much. And then for the rest of you that are still here on Twitch and Twitter and YouTube, we really appreciate you guys for showing us support. We got one extra like from. Okay, there we go. We have to deal with lagging issues on all sides. Live visuals from both ends. Yeah, there we go. So, like I was saying, I really appreciate you guys showing up and giving us love. You guys have really showed us a lot of support. So we really appreciate that. And got to come out of here. I want to say that I am your host, Xander, with This and That, where we talk about this, that, and everything in between. And now I let the rest of you go on Twitch, YouTube, and Twitter. So y'all have a good night. I'll see y'all tomorrow night, 9 Eastern, 8 Central, 5 Pacific.